Next to speak is Deputy Creighton, Deputy of 10 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Cahirlock, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this matter of some public concern and absolute public interest. I welcome the announcement of a commission of inquiry. However, I'm really disappointed at the way in which the government has gone about forming the terms of reference, and particularly with the fact that there has been so little regard to the very serious concerns that have been raised by members of the opposition, myself and my party included. We have tabled a motion calling on the government to amend the terms of reference this evening. We are specifically calling on the government to ensure that the Commission of Investigation will submit to An Taoiseach an interim report in relation to its investigation no later than the 14th of September 2015 on the status and the likely conclusion date of its work. That no later than the 15th of September 2015 the Dáil will be recalled to debate the interim report of the Commission of Investigation. And specifically, we are calling for a reference within the terms of reference to the Minister for Finance providing all resources and supports which may be necessary to the Commission of Inquiry in a manner that will ensure that the final report would be published no later than the 30th of October. I think it's quite extraordinary that after all of our years of tribunals of investigation, of scandals in public life, of stealth, of cloak and dagger, that we still have not mastered the art of investigating wrongdoing or issues of public concern in an expeditious fashion. I was accused by a junior minister the other day of wanting to have my cake and eat it, simply because I've asked the government to conduct an expeditious inquiry and a thorough inquiry. I don't believe that the two are mutually exclusive, and that is what we are being told by a government that is now so arrogant that it doesn't actually believe it has to account to anybody. We all know that this inquiry will not be concluded and this report will not be in the public domain before the next general election. That's just patently obvious, and I think if we needed any evidence or proof of that intention, I think it is clear for us in the conduct of the Fennelly inquiry, and I think that's extremely regrettable. So I will reiterate my call to the Minister to put a tighter time frame on this inquiry, to ensure that there is an interim report after the summer, and to ensure that that interim report is aired and debated here in the Dáil chamber, and that we don't have to wait until after this Dáil has been resolved and a new Parliament in place after the next general election. We have also called for a reduction in the capital threshold for this inquiry. €10 million, the figure that the government has insisted on. I'm very suspicious of that, I have to say. I have already expressed my concerns on the basis that I have information pertaining to write-downs of in the region of €5 million. I don't know if they're accurate or true or otherwise, but I want the inquiry to find out. And I don't think it's fair to say that, you know, if something is raised with the inquiry, if something comes to light, then they'll investigate it. Because when the threshold is so high, it ensures that that many issues of concern may very well be excluded. The other point which we have made and which we have included in our motion this evening is to ensure that whatever transactions occurred, we need to understand clearly what protocols and controls the Minister for Finance and his department had in respect of various transactions, and whether sanction was given or knowledge, or there was knowledge of such transactions. And again, the dealings between IBRC and the Minister and the department are effectively excluded from this inquiry, which makes it a pretty toothless dog. There are a number of contradictions which have emerged over the last number of weeks, and I just want to touch on some of them because they're very pertinent to this issue relating to the Department of Finance, its role, its relevance, and why it ought to be included in the terms of reference. So in addressing the Joint Committee on Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform in October 2012, the IBRC Chief Executive Mike Ainsley stated that the bank does not have any debt forgiveness capacity, and that's a direct quote. Furthermore, he declared that IBRC had a policy of not writing down loans for customers, and that's a quote. Mr Ainsley was singing an entirely different tune last weekend in responding to the Sunday Business Post's findings that 40 private individuals and businesses received a combined debt write-off of more than €1 billion. He admitted that the taxpayer has effectively shouldered the burden. So an absolute U-turn by that individual. My question to the Minister for Finance, were he still in the chamber, but he is not, but perhaps, Minister, you might pass on my question to him, is when did these write-downs begin in IBRC, and why were the general public not told about it? Was the Minister aware that write-downs for customers were taking place? Does the Minister stand by Mike Ainsley's testimony to the Joint Committee on Finance in October 2012 that they had a policy of not writing down loans for customers? I think in light of the Minister's own statement on the 30th of April this year that there was a professional working relationship between the Department of Finance and senior management of IBRC at all times, it seems reasonable on that basis to believe that he did have knowledge of the extremely favourable deals being conducted between the bank and the individuals concerned. And if this is not the case, how can he justify a situation where huge quantities of public money were effectively given away in sweetheart deals without the slightest element of parliamentary scrutiny or oversight? This reflects, or this goes back directly to the motion which Renew Ireland has on the order paper this evening, and we are calling again on the Minister and on the Government to include the Department of Finance, because we need clarity on these issues. We need to know what was going on, who knew what, where and when. What about SiteServe? Well, in an interview Mike Ainsley gave to the Sunday Business Post on the 26th of April 2015, he stated, as reported, that IBRC drew specific comfort from the exclusion of the bank's head of specialised asset management, that was Richard Woodhouse, from the decision-making process, as he was also responsible for a performing client and potential bidder, one Dennis O'Brien. Speaking on News Talk the day before Mr Ainsley's interview, former IBRC chairman Alan Duke said that as the bank expected Dennis O'Brien to be one of the bidders in SiteServe's sale, Richard Woodhouse was excluded from the decision-making to ensure its processes were, and I quote, robust and above board. But in minutes which the Minister has said were previously lost but now miraculously have been found and published on the Department's website, it shows an IBRC board meeting on the 15th of March 2012 where it minutes Woodhouse, who was supposed to be excluded from this process, as stating that a letter had been received from Virgo Capital attesting to the fairness of the sales process which had been followed to date. It further minuted that Mr Woodhouse responded to a question about the involvement of Mr Dix in the process by noting the role which he played as a director of SiteServe while simultaneously serving as a director of Quinn ROI. We need answers to all of this, Minister, and it's not clear from the terms of reference that have been agreed by Cabinet today that any of this will be aired. In the same interview, Mike Ainsley went on to say, "I don't think it's a secret that I don't get on at all well with John." The John he was referring to was the then Secretary General of the Department of Finance. And I would like to know from Minister Noonan whether it was a secret to him that his own Secretary-General didn't get on with the CEO of a bank that was charged with disposing €70 billion of state assets on behalf of Irish taxpayers. It was certainly a secret to the general public, it was a secret to this House, it was a secret to the whole of Oireachtas as far as I'm aware. When the liquidation of IBRC was announced, this is what Minister Noonan personally said of the management of IBRC. Minister Noonan said, "I wish to acknowledge with much appreciation the significant efforts the directors and staff of the IBRC have made to the stabilisation of and maintenance of value in the IBRC. Now, the Minister was painting a picture that does not appear to reflect the views of his department. We're well aware at this stage of unease that was expressed, of concerns that John Moran and other senior officials in the Department of Finance had. But unfortunately, because of the narrow scope, the deliberately narrow scope of the terms of reference of this inquiry, we're not going to learn anything about that relationship. We're not going to learn anything about concerns or otherwise that Minister Noonan had. We're going to learn nothing about the dysfunctional nature of the relationship between the department and the IBRC. I don't believe that this is acceptable, and I don't believe, and I certainly can assure the Minister that if he thinks, or if the government think, that by siphoning this off to a toothless investigation until after the next general election, that you will silence questions from this side of the House, that you will silence members of the opposition from pursuing genuine questions on behalf of the Irish people. You're wrong, it won't happen, and we will continue to pursue all of these issues.
Thank you, Deputy Creighton.